Hello, friends, and thank you as always for visiting the Legend Sports Universe YouTube channel, Legend Sports Universe, where legends play forever. Boxing is one of my favorite sports, has been since I was a kid. I grew up when top fighters were fighting for free every weekend on Wide World of Sports. And yes, I know I'm dating myself there. But I got to see legends like my all-time favorite Marvin Hagler, wars like Fennec versus Nelson, all from my living room at 4 p.m. on a Saturday, and I was in my glory. But despite my love of the sport, boxing has been kind of dormant here on my channel. I've done some, but none in more than a year, and I've missed it. I've been searching for a way to bring boxing to life here on the Legend Sports Universe to create a fun home for the sport I love and give myself a chance to call some really fun bouts along the way. And I feel like I'm finally there. A few years ago, before my Legend Sports Universe really became a thing, I discussed in a few places that I was working on a title bout to fight night conversion project through which I had developed a system to convert ratings from the classic Title Bout board game and a computer game created by the iconic Trunzo brothers into fighter ratings for use in Fight Night Champion, the best boxing game ever produced for the consoles. By the time I was done, I had pretty much nailed the system, which utilized the title bout ratings, real life data from sources like BoxRec and CompuBox, and extensive research into fighters from throughout history. But soon after I reached that point, EA took down the Boxer share for Fight Night, which at the time was 11 years old, having been released in 2011, which meant I could no longer share the fighters I created. Also meant I had no place to store fighters I wasn't using at a given time if I had gone on to create a couple of hundred fighters. So, with that being the case, I semi packed up the project. Really, I ended up shifting it. At that time, a new boxing game was being developed, Esports Boxing Club, which was finally released a couple of months ago under a new title, Undisputed. When it was going by ESBC, I was very involved in discussions about fighter ratings and the prospect of taking the work I'd done with Title Bout and Fight Night and evolving the project to Undisputed. I've been working on the Undisputed aspect of this project for a couple of months now, and I believe I have a system in place to utilize Title Bout as the basis for Undisputed, just as I had for Fight Night. I'm excited to announce that in the next couple of weeks or so, I will debut a reborn Legend Sports Universe Boxing Federation project that will be carried out as a hybrid project utilizing Title Bout, Fight Night, and Undisputed. Thought I was going to get this thing going a few weeks ago, but then there was another patch for Undisputed, and I wanted to see if further tweaks were needed. They were, which was a good thing, and guard against rushing this out before it was really clicking on an acceptable level. So the question, of course, I'm imagining a lot of people are thinking is why use three games for the one project? The simple answer is because they are good at different things. Title Bout's biggest strength is in its ratings accuracy, its approach that really gives the feeling fighters are performing well, not just looking good, which is the danger of a graphical representation. I know for a younger leaning crowd that is mostly drawn to Undisputed, the concept of simulating boxing in a card game format sounds dull. Title Bout made it feel alive. The biggest key to that was its use of control factor, the means by which a fighter controlled the direction of a fight. Styles make fights is an adage that has been said countless times over the years because it's true, and it's the hardest part for a graphical simulation to represent well. The computer version also allows for big batches of fights to be simmed, meaning I can use Title Bout as home base of sorts for the Lsubf, and then just enter the results from outside the game, fights I've run within Undisputed and Fight Night, into Title Bout to get it all updated and track the stats and the records, etc. Undisputed is a good game that could and should be great. Fighters look great, it's visually pleasing, and for the majority of fighters, the game does a solid job as a sim once you play with the ratings a bit, which is my thing. Movement is fluid for the most part, particularly in terms of moving around the ring. Undisputed's main issue is nuance. The game itself was really created with a focus, and they were honest about this from the start, that their real focus was about online fighting, guys going online and finding other people online and having their boxing matches online. That was their focus. They called it a simulation, but when they were talking about simulation, they weren't meaning sim as in the way I do things, CPU versus CPU and that kind of stuff. They meant that they wanted to have fighters perform well, react well to what you were directing them to do, etc. Move right, have stamina matter, those kinds of things, rather than it just being a button masher. And if you're one of the people who, or if you are interested in that kind of thing, there are people who will review Undisputed and what it does in that context online far better than I will do. So I'm not going to go getting into a breakdown of that kind of stuff here. I've touched on it a little bit previously, but there are a bunch of people who are much more qualified to evaluate how Undisputed plays as an online fighting game than I am. So the game, when I'm talking about nuance, the game just isn't deep enough there. So your top end defensive fighters, for example, or fighters with an unusual style, they're a bit hard to replicate in Undisputed. Defensive wizards are non-existent. Awkward styles like Nassim Hamed aren't replicated. Those defensive wizards, I'm talking about guys like, I'm not talking about just decent defensive fighters. I'm talking about elite defensive fighters. Pernell Whitaker, Nicolino Loesch, Willie Pep, if you're going back away. Wilfred Benitez, as our good friend Steve Tate mentioned in chat with me the other day. Guys like that, guys with physical traits outside the norm also are not creatable in Undisputed. Guys who are particularly tall or with long reaches for their weight class, guys like Sonny Liston, Thomas Hearns, Paul Williams, can't be done. I've touched on that previously, so I won't go on that rant again here. But Undisputed puts inexplicable barriers to dimensions the fighters can be made based on weight class. It's completely idiotic. I'll leave it at that. The trait system that Undisputed has does help add nuance to the fighters. You can have a guy be a strong inside fighter, excel with particular punches, etc. And that's great. That's a huge plus. But the defensive wizards and flat out sluggers who are too overpowered, even though that was improved in the last update, they're hard to do properly in Undisputed. Getting how a fighter fights is solid in most cases, but significantly off in others. Basically, those that I just mentioned. The last point is what brings me to Fight Night Champion. Will Fight Night Champion look dated on the channel, especially next to Undisputed? Yes. But the strength of Fight Night Champion for me was, after tons of testing, learning how to make fighters fight properly. Accuracy ratings matter. More fighter style options to choose from. Defense ratings matter. Are there issues? Sure. The decision to make punch power and block power, or hand and foot speed, single power or speed ratings, for example, is absurdly stupid for a game that gets so much of the nuanced stuff right. But the fighters and situations that Undisputed doesn't do well are situations that Fight Night Champion, in my opinion, handles very well. So between the two of them, I feel most, if not all, bases are going to get covered. So, how is the Legend Sports Universe Boxing Federation going to work? As is the case with everything I run here on the Legend Sports Universe, this is a cross-era setup, utilizing fighters from throughout history and putting them in a single environment. It is built to have a career mode structure, to have in other sports kind of parlance, a franchise mode structure to it. A quick breakdown here of the setup. Only champions will be eligible to be in each weight class's master pool. For guys who were champions in multiple weight classes, your Manny Pacquiao's, for example, Thomas Hearns, they're going to start out in the class they won their first title at. I have a system in place that'll let them move up in weight classes as time goes on. So Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather Jr., Hearns, etc. Obviously, it applies to a ton of guys. Will all be able to have the ability to move up through weight classes through their career, but they're going to start out in the first weight class where they won a title in one of the major federations. To start, a random generator will pick 25 champions per weight class, from heavyweight all the way down to bantamweight. Those fighters will be in the LSUBF from the beginning. The remaining champions in each weight class will enter one per 3 months of game time. So again, this will have a career franchise mode feel to it, those guys being rookies of sorts, i.e. Muhammad Ali wasn't drawn for year one, but will obviously be part of the LSUBF down the line. Utilizing Title Bout, each weight class pool to start will also feature, in addition to those 25 champions, 50, using an old school boxing term here, tomato cans, low level fighters to fill out the ranks of each class. Then, in each class, 500 random fights will be scheduled in Title Bout through the auto scheduler. That will get us a starting point of records for all of these fighters who'll be a bit into their careers, and it will also set things up for an initial 8-man title tournament in each class, based on the top 8 ranked fighters after those fights are done. The first fighters I will create for Undisputed and Fight Night are the guys in those 8-man tournaments, who will be created using the formulas I've developed, incorporating Title Bout ratings with, when available, real-life stats. The tournaments will then be run in Undisputed and Fight Night and streamed and called by me on the channel. Once the tournaments conclude, monthly fight schedules will be created using the Title Bout schedule generator, with each fighter having a 50% chance of fighting in a given month. Any title fight and all matchups between two fighters ranked in the top 10 will be executed in Undisputed and Fight Night, and I will broadcast them. All other fights will be run as sims in Title Bout. Fights meeting the aforementioned broadcast criteria, fights meeting these parameters will be held using Fight Night. A fighter with a defensive rating in Title Bout of -3 or better. A fighter whose physical proportions fall outside the limits of Undisputed's models, which is rare, but again, it happens in the cases I mentioned earlier of Liston and Hearns and Paul Punisher Williams and guys like that. A fight involving a slugger against what Undisputed would classify as an outboxer. Sluggers and Undisputed are a bit overpowered, and outboxers a bit underpowered. I can bridge the gap with ratings tweaks in matchups other than outboxer versus slugger. So those matchups will be held in Fight Night. As I've started to process fighter ratings with 3 classes, 12 fights to go, the Undisputed Fight Night breakdown is almost even, which wasn't planned. It's just the way it's worked out, but it's pretty cool regardless. In the coming days, I'm going to throw up short videos on each of the weight class pools and tournament brackets here on the channel, in addition to posting the schedule for the first few cards to be held as the tournaments get underway. Broadcast cards will generally be 3 fights, an intro bout, a solid bout, and then a main eventer. I'm almost more excited for the bouts that will be the intro bouts because I love the deep dives. Solid fighters who maybe weren't the stars of boxing, but good, solid fighters, champions. A guy like, and because he's fresh in my mind because I just created him, a guy like former junior lightweight champ Cornelius Boza Edwards. Like a guy like that, I'm excited to run fights with a guy like that. Not just your great, junior lightweights. Obviously, a guy like Floyd and Manny went through that weight class, and a ton of other guys. Um, so the guys like that, I'm kind of excited to be running this with them. As always, I greatly appreciate your time. Like I said, I didn't want this to go on too long, but I've posted about this project in a couple places. I want to kind of give a little bit more explanation to what you can expect from it. Bang that like button if you haven't as of yet. Subscribe if you haven't, so you can come along for the ride here and with everything else going on in the Legend Sports universe. We've got the Franchise Stars Football League playoffs going on, the Franchise Stars Basketball Association, and year 4 of the Franchise Stars Baseball League getting ready to get jump started soon. Most importantly, folks, be good to each other, and we'll talk soon.